And we can speak to Sir Gerald Howarth, who is a former UK Defence Minister. He joins us from Suffolk in the United Kingdom. We're also joined by Antikov, who is a political analyst based in Moscow. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Andrew, let me start with you. I'd like both of you to set out your positions, but tell us, Andrew, 2,000 Ukrainian civilians have been reported killed this year. More than 14,000 have been killed since the start of the war nearly 4 years ago. What is Russia's justification? What's Russia trying to achieve here?
Well, of course, Russia does not target civilians in Ukraine. What we need is to find a solution, a peaceful solution. Unfortunately, what we see is that there is an escalation from European countries, from the United States. Instead of discussing the real solution, peaceful solution, the ways to achieve this solution, we see that Ukraine is still receiving lots of weapons from Western countries, and so on and so on. This is the real problem. I think the problem is that we see that the Western countries found some committees. They discuss the ways to deploy their soldiers in Ukraine after the ceasefire. They discuss how to exploit Russian assets and so on and so on. But they discuss it. They ignore Russian position. This is the real problem. They behave as there is no Russia on the world map.
Okay, so it sounds like you're saying this is all the fault of interests. This is all the fault of the Europeans, you're saying, and that they need to. They're responsible for prolonging the war. So, Gerald, let me ask you to respond to some of those comments that Andrew just made.
Well, of course, it's crystal clear to the entire world that it was Russia which launched an unprovoked, brutal aggression against a sovereign state, Ukraine. There was absolutely no justification for it. Indeed, Russia had already annexed Crimea in 2014. They have been undertaking military activity in the Donbass eastern region of Ukraine since 2014. And this is the most disgusting modern assault upon a sovereign state, and in complete breach of an agreement which Andrei's former president of Russia had signed. Boris Yeltsin had signed an agreement with Ukraine, the United Kingdom, and the United States, under which the parties agreed to respect the sovereignty, independence, and existing borders of Ukraine. This is the most brutal and violent aggression against another country, and all that we are doing is to help Ukraine to fulfill that duty which Russia has reneged upon, namely to ensure that the existing borders of Ukraine should be respected. The idea that Andrew says that Russia is not targeting civilians, we see on our television screens every night. We see civilian blocks of flats that have been targeted by Russia. Andrew needs to understand that it is his president who has been charged with war crimes at the International Criminal Court. And he needs to understand that the entire respected international community finds this an absolute, utter, contemptible disgrace.
Okay, Andrew, some strong words there from Sir Gerald. Feel free to respond to any of that. And let me also ask you, what is Russia achieving on the battlefield? Have there been any strategic breakthroughs?
Well, we see that Russia has freed lots of territories in the former Ukraine, so to say, former Ukraine. I talk here about Donbass, some other territories, and so there is a straight way, ground way from the Russian territories to Crimea. This is very important for us because before this operation, there was only a bridge that connected the Crimea with the other Russian territories. So the achievement is clear for everybody, but we insist on the withdrawal of Ukrainian forces from Donbass, from Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson, and Zaporozhye. So this is the main Russian condition. And also we need to discuss the future of Ukraine. I mean here that I mentioned previously that the European countries discussed the deployment of Western soldiers, soldiers from Western countries in Ukraine, but this is absolutely unacceptable for Russia. Well, there is lots of talks about ceasefire in Ukraine. This is also unacceptable for Russia. Let's imagine that Russia agrees with ceasefire. I'll tell you what's going to happen next. During a couple of months, this ceasefire will be stable, but during this time, Ukraine will get some reinforcements. Ukraine will get more weapons from Western countries, and after that, Russia will be accused of something, and the combat will start.
But Andrei,
this is the problem. That's why we don't need.
Okay. Okay, Andrei, let's Gerald respond to that.
Andrei, forgive me. It's not your country. You said that you need to hold the Donbass in order to get access to overland to Crimea. Crimea does not belong to you. Crimea belongs to Ukraine. And you have seized Crimea by military force. And now you justify taking the Donbass in order to give you somebody else's country so that you can access another part of that person's country. This is absolutely disgusting. And the idea that the Europeans are somehow ramping up, escalating, no, we are not. We are helping Ukraine to fight off an evil and brutal aggressor in the form of you and your people. And it's, I don't know if you've been watching, but there are people in St. Petersburg who are beginning to complain about the way that President Putin is conducting this brutal aggression against another country. There are Russians who are speaking up. And of course, in Russia, it's pretty well a crime to speak up. And so you need to understand, we are going to stand firm behind Ukraine. We are going to support them because your brutal aggression, your seizing of Ukrainian children and taking them to indoctrinate them in Russia in the 21st century, this is absolutely and utterly despicable, Andrei.
Andrei?
Well, let's talk about Iraq then, or maybe Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia. But I want to respond that we talk about, as you say, Russian aggression as if Russia has decided to make this step, just as if there was nothing before that. But I would like to remind you that before what happened in the year 2014, there was a coup in Ukraine, a military coup. And after this coup, the people were killed by new Ukrainian Nazi government in Ukraine, in Donbass. This is the real problem. That's why Russia has ended this case. And there was a referendum in Crimea, after that in Donbass, and anybody can go to Crimea now and ask people if they are happy with that decision from the year 2014. And I'm sure that most of them will be happy with that. They will say that they are Russian people, they're happy to be with Russia, inside Russia. This is the thing that the Western countries do not want to understand.
Russia has no idea.
So, Gerald?
Russia has no idea how to hold free elections. The referendum in the Donbass was rigged, as elections in Russia are rigged. And when you say there was a coup in 2014, do not, because you have no idea of democracy in Russia. You eliminate people who stand up against the Kremlin. There was no coup in 2014. The Ukrainian people voted for a different leadership. And the Ukrainian people would like to join the European Union. I personally wanted Britain to leave the European Union, and we have. And we had a free vote in this country. But in Ukraine, they would like to join the European Union. That must be a decision for them. It's not a decision for you. What arrogance you are trying to assert over the Ukrainian people. It's not for you. It's not for the Kremlin to decide who represents the people of Ukraine. It's for the Ukrainian people. But as you have such little understanding of democracy in Russia, I quite understand why you do not accept the position in Ukraine. And don't call them Nazis. That is really quite revolting. The Nazis murdered 6 million Jews. They are not murdering civilians in Ukraine. The people who are doing that sort of activity are your people. Because don't forget, you poisoned a couple here in the United Kingdom. You sent agents here and you poisoned them in Salisbury, in our country.
Okay, Andrew, I'll let you respond to that and we'll move on to my next question after that.
I'd like to remind everybody that what happened in the year 2014, there was an agreement reached by President Viktor Yanukovych and the opposition leaders. The agreement that established a transitional period, and after that the presidential elections must be held. This agreement was also signed by some European countries. Instead of that, the day after that, after assignment of this agreement, there was a coup in Ukraine. This is the problem. President Yanukovych had to flee. This is not a democracy. It's a military coup. And after that, we saw people burned alive in Odessa, in the city of Odessa, by Nazi forces, Ukrainian Nazi forces. We saw the people in Crimea. They were heavily stressed by what happened in Ukraine. So once again, there are lots of media in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in European countries, in the Arab world. Any journalist can go to the Crimea and ask people, freely ask people, what do they think about current events and what happened in the year 2014. Everybody is happy. Why? Why? Because Russia started to invest many money in the Crimea. They started to build infrastructure. Crimea, during those years before 2014, was actually left by the Ukrainian government. Corruption, no investments, nothing. Yeah, Soviet buildings, and this is what was in Crimea during all those years. After the year 2014, new airports were built, new roads were built, new hospitals were built there. This is the thing what Russia did. Are people happy with that? For sure they are. But this, again, this is the thing that the European countries, the United States, do not want to recognize. They don't see what people really think, people in the streets.
So you're saying that the Russian forces liberated Crimea, is that what you're basically saying? And that it's a much happier place than it used to be? Is that your argument?
I want to say that the Russian forces did not liberate Crimea, but they have made the conditions for people to make their choices, and this choice has been made. And I think nobody in Crimea rejects that choice made in the year 2014. Okay. This is the main thing, because yeah.
Let's let Sir Gerald respond to that.
They're not in a position to object. The fact is that you overran Crimea. Russia annexed Crimea to turn it into part of Russia. And as you have just admitted, and I hope people are watching this Al Arabiya interview in the Gulf states, heard it loud and clear from the man from Moscow who said that the reason why Russia insists on keeping the land that they have illegally seized, that is in eastern Ukraine, the so-called Donbass region of Ukraine, the reason they have seized it is to give them land access to the land they have already seized in Crimea, contrary to an agreement signed by their own president in 1995. It is just an absolute and utter disgrace and a complete affront to the world order. But then Russia has become a pariah. And if the people in Crimea have benefited from hospitals, well, I suspect there are people in other parts of Russia which are not benefiting from anything at the moment, because all the money that Russia has got is being spent on armaments to reinforce a military operation which was only supposed to last 3 days. But they didn't reckon with the patriotism and determination of the people of Ukraine to resist this aggression.
Okay, Andrew, let me turn back to you, because one of the things that the Kremlin's been saying today is that intelligence sources have been intercepting voices, foreign voices on the front line, implying that there's foreign involvement supporting Ukraine. I want to ask you why this is significant in your opinion.
We see that this position is obvious for us. I mentioned previously that they claim to start a ceasefire this is not acceptable for Russia. I told previously that if Russia agrees with that, then it doesn't mean that Ukraine will stop receiving reinforcements, that Ukraine will stop receiving weapons from different countries. Well, Russia says maybe we could agree with a ceasefire, but on condition that all the military activities must be stopped. Of course, Ukraine does not agree, the European countries do not agree. So when we talk about a ceasefire, we absolutely understand that the European countries, the United States, Ukraine itself want to use this chance to get stronger, to restart the fighting in the future. Maybe after a month or 2 months, but it's obvious for everybody that that's only a little break. This ceasefire will not lead to a peace solution for Ukrainian crisis. Instead of that, we need to sit down, we need to join the negotiations, and we need to respect mutual positions. This is what Russia insists on. The problem is that everybody discusses the guarantees for Ukraine.
So, Gerald?
There is not a mutual position here. There is not a mutual position here. Discuss our mutual positions. Discussing the current combat line, where Russia occupies somebody else's country, and that country is fighting to stop your country taking even more of their land. That is not acceptable. And when you talk about foreign involvement, Tom, let's not forget that Russia imported something like 10,000 North Koreans to come and fight in their support in eastern Ukraine. There is, as far as I'm aware, there are no NATO troops in Ukraine supporting Ukraine. Yes, we are supporting Ukraine in many other ways. We are supporting them in the development of their drone industry, which is I have seen at first hand in Lviv when I was there earlier this year. We are doing everything we can. My son-in-law is Shadow Secretary of State for Defense. When he was Minister for Defense Procurement, he was helping to ensure Ukraine was armed with drones as well. We are going to do everything, Andrei, to prevent this brutal regime of yours from seizing another country in complete violation of an agreement which your president signed. So be under no illusions. And this soft speak about a ceasefire that we would reinforce. Sure, we are going to reinforce Ukraine every bit we possibly can, because, Andrei, if we do not succeed in driving out your forces from the land that they have seized in Ukraine, your president will turn to other countries and seek to impose the same brutal aggression on them as he has imposed upon Ukraine. He is intent upon rebuilding the Soviet Union, and I heard you use the word Soviet earlier because you're obviously part of that old regime. It's yesterday's history, but it's what President Putin wishes to rebuild, and it was a threat to the world, and it was only thanks to Mikhail Gorbachev that peace came to Europe.
Okay, Andrei, lots for you to reply to there. And notably, I saw you shaking your head when Sir Gerald mentioned there are 10,000 North Koreans or thereabouts helping Russia on the front line. How do you respond to that? And how do you respond to the notion that President Putin is simply trying to reconstruct the Soviet Union here?
Just give me a second. This is what I'm talking about. Well, the European countries, what I heard from a guest, the European countries want to defeat Russia. This is the thing. They want to defeat Russia instead of discussing the future
we want to drive them out of Ukraine. We're not seeking to defeat Russia. We're seeking to help Ukraine drive your people out of a country you do not own. That is what we are seeking to do.
When you destroyed Yugoslavia, you didn't mind the Russian opinion. When you destroyed Yugoslavia, you didn't mind the Russian opinion. You destroyed a whole country, a big country. You crushed it in the lots of countries. This is the problem.
Let's stick with the present day. Let's stick to Ukraine.
Aggression against Ukraine. So let's get back to Ukraine. That's what I mean. The European countries talk about defeating Russia. it's not acceptable.
don't talk about
If
defeating
they
Russia.
behave so,
So Gerald says that they're not talking about defeating.
European
They're not
countries,
defeating. They're not trying to defeat Russia. They're trying to help Ukraine to defend its sovereign borders. That's what Sir Gerald is saying, I think.
what's the difference? What's the difference between the two issues?
The difference is that we are not seeking to
helping
British
Ukraine means
troops
defeating Russia.
We're not seeking to destroy Moscow. You are seeking to destroy Kyiv, and we are trying to protect Kyiv. That is the fundamental difference. And if you do not understand that, either you are not very intelligent, and I suspect you are quite intelligent, or else you're just a spokesman for a most corrupt regime operating the Kremlin, which I think is behind you.
Okay, let's let Andrei respond to this.
Well, I can assure you, if Russia really wanted to destroy Kyiv, it would really did it. As the NATO forces destroyed lots of parts of Belgrade previously in Yugoslavia, but we see that the center of Kyiv is not destroyed. President Zelenskyy is there. Lots of leaders arrive in Kyiv, and they hold negotiations with the Ukrainian government. Russia does not want to destroy Kyiv or any other.
People aren't going to Kyiv thanks to the goodwill of the Russian people or the president of Russia. They're able to go to Kyiv because, notwithstanding the astonishing bombardment that you are unleashing on the capital of Ukraine and upon their other cities, notwithstanding that, the Ukrainians have been able to shoot down so many of the drones that you are directing to them. Not all of them, of course, have successfully been successfully shot down, but they have shot down a lot. You are basically not winning. It is a stalemate at the moment, and you are just expending your young men, using them as cannon fodder, which again I just think is a complete and utter contempt.
Okay, Andrei, let me turn back to you. I'd like to ask you, as we sort of bring this discussion to a conclusion, how do you see this war in Ukraine ending, and when?
When, it's a good question. We don't know, because we see different positions. As I mentioned previously, the European countries insist on defeating Russia. Russia says, well, it makes Russia to fight more. This is the problem. How? That's a better question, because I think that what Russia sees is that Ukrainian territory must be a territory that, so to say, divides Russia and European countries. It means that no to European military presence in Ukraine, no to Ukraine in NATO, and so on and so on. So Ukraine must be a neutral country. Ukraine must be without any forces from the United States, European countries, or any other countries that supplied Ukraine with military weapons or any other military assistance. This is the real way to find a solution. But in common, I can say that the way to find this solution, I think, is that the other countries should respect or at least hear the Russian position.
Andrei,
at the moment they ignore it absolutely. As I mentioned, as if there is no Russia on the world map. This is not the way to find a solution for this crisis.
Okay, so Andrei, you think that President Putin really is serious about wanting peace?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so Gerald, how do you respond?
Putin has done absolutely nothing to bring about peace. He's got the President of the United States around his little finger. He has dragged out the negotiations because he is trying to win a military battle in another country by seizing all the territory that he's not yet seized. And if he can't seize it all, by insisting that the whole of the Donbass, including that which Russian forces have so far failed to secure, that is given over to Russia. It is just simply unacceptable. And the idea that the Ukraine, it's a sovereign country, Andrei. It's just the same as, well, it's not, of course, the same as Russia, but it enjoys the same status as Russia. It is a free country. The idea that it has got to be neutral, that it cannot sign alliances it wishes to sign, that nobody should be allowed to occupy or to take part in peace support operations to prevent your country doing again what it has done twice in Ukraine. I mean, this is absurd. You cannot tell another country that is what they've got to do. If they want to join NATO, in my view, they should be allowed to join NATO. And Andre, you should understand, Sweden and Finland have been neutral since the end of the Second World War. And because of your president's action, because of Russia's belligerence, those two countries asked, in the aftermath of the attack on Ukraine, they asked to join NATO, ceasing to be neutral, but joining NATO. Why? Because they fear for you. Poland fears for you. Not one of those countries, which used to be part of the Soviet Union, wants to be involved with you again. That should say something about you. And that is why I'm afraid Russia does not occupy the status on the world stage that it used to. It is not because it is something like the 20th, 21st economy in the world. It is not that there are only products here in the United Kingdom that I want to go into the shops to buy from Russia. You don't produce anything I want to buy. All you have is oil and natural resources. Russia has brought about its own reduced state in the world. And by seeking to attack and annex the whole of another country where they're treaty bound to respect that country's borders, I mean, it's a lost cause, I'm afraid. You're just losing support, except amongst dictators around the world, but you're losing support from civilized countries.
All right, Sir Gerald, I'm going to give you the last word in just a moment because Andre had the first word. But Andre, let me just ask you to respond to some of the comments that have been made there by Sir Gerald.
Oh, well, I think, as I mentioned previously, we only need to find a solution for this crisis. And when we hear the talks that Russia has made an aggression against Ukraine, that Russia breaks any rules, that's not the way to find solution for Ukrainian crisis. I hear, as you talk with me, as I think, so to say, a citizen of some kind of barbarian country. That's not the thing. You can't behave with Russia in the way like that. So if we want a solution for this crisis, we need to sit down. We need to discuss the ways we need to discuss not only Ukraine but also the security issues in the whole Europe. I mentioned previously that there was the spread of NATO. NATO became very close to Russian borders, and it all threatens Russia. Of course, Russia starts to move. And let's get back to the Ukrainian crisis. What happened in the year 2014 is that the Ukrainian forces started to bombard the people in Donbass. That Donbass that was previously in Ukraine, but now it is the Russian territory. I mean that Russia insisted on that the Minsk agreements should take place, that they must be made signed by President Poroshenko. By the way, President Poroshenko, the former Ukrainian leader, said that when he signed those agreements, he didn't intend to make them, to get them, to make them. This is the problem, and we see this behavior, and this is what made Russia to start its military operation. Now the people in Donbass are freed. Now the people in Crimea are freed. Now there is a new reality on the ground. If the European countries or the United States are not happy with this reality on the ground, then a new reality on the ground will be formed until the Russian conditions will be accepted.
Okay, so Gerald, I'll ask you to respond to that, and I want to ask you this final question as well, since you didn't have the opening words in this discussion. Should Ukraine give up any of its territory in the interests of peace, and do you think it will?
It is not a matter for me to tell the Ukrainian people.
That's for Sir Gerald. That's for Sir Gerald. This is the last.
It's not for me to tell the Ukrainian people whether they should give up land or not. That is for Ukrainian people to decide what sort of outcome they are prepared to accept from any peace talks which eventually take place. But talking to Ukrainians when I was in Lviv earlier this year, they do not want to give up a single square inch of the land that is theirs and does not belong to Russia. And you've just heard all of those watching this in the Gulf. I mean, you've heard it in words of one syllable. Russia, in the form of its new incarnation as the old Soviet Union, believes that the parts of Ukraine which it has taken by force belong to it. And I think it's very sad. Russia is diminished in the world. That is undoubtedly true. The Donbass is not part of Russia. Indeed, the Donbass is not wholly under the control of Russia. But I say this in a spirit of resignation that I think this is all extremely sad. I worked for the Sukhoi Design Bureau. You may have heard of them. They're the company who designed the Su-27 flanker aircraft. And I spent a year working with them to see if we could work together to produce a combat aircraft between the United Kingdom and the new Russia. And so I developed friendships in Russia, and I think this is extremely sad. And it is all down to a president who's absolutely determined to rebuild the Soviet Union and does not care one jot about his own people. His country is falling behind in the world. There's nothing we want to buy from Russia that's made in Russia. We don't want to buy your cars, don't want to buy your airplanes. So, it is very sad indeed, Andre, but there is only one outcome to this that is acceptable. That is, you withdraw every single one of the soldiers, the conscripts that you have put into eastern Ukraine, and you accept the borders as they were accepted in 1995 by President Boris Yeltsin, and you declare solemnly before God that you will not reinvade Ukraine ever again. That is the only way that can be an outcome. And if you do that, we might be able to talk in a civilized fashion.
OK, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Sir Gerald, you had the last word. Sir Gerald Howarth, former UK Defence Minister, thank you for your time. Andrew Antikov, you had the first word. Thank you very much for joining us. Andrew Antikov is a political analyst based in Moscow. Thank you very much indeed to you both, gentlemen.